The scariest video you've ever had.
Incredible that you two survived.
One of the best true stories I've heard on
I
YouTube.
have got goosebumps just listening to this story.
That's crazy.
This is the absolute craziest story I've ever heard.
Well, boys and girls, story time's not quite over yet. Today, we're going to be going through what I learned from 5 years of thinking about this problem, because anything that happens like this is not one thing, not one decision. It's a series of unfortunate events. We're going to talk about all of them, what I wish I had, the gear, and lastly, the one thing that was a ticking time bomb with this boat, and we didn't even know it, and it was there when we bought it. If you want to see that, skip to the end. If you want to learn, come with me. So there are two storm systems in the Pacific. There's the hurricanes in the north and the cyclones in the south. The hurricanes spin anti-clockwise and the cyclones spin clockwise. You need to know that as a sailor. And in the Western Pacific, they call them typhoons. For some reason, I really don't know why. I can't find that information. It's just one of those answers like, this is how it's done. Whatever the name, you cannot sail through them, period. So if you're out there during storm season, you need to have a plan. And there's really only 4 strategies for cyclone season. First, you spend the cyclone season in eastern French Polynesia, in the Marquesas or Tahiti or the Tuamotus, the Gambier Islands, any of these islands. It's technically in the zone, but barely. 2, sail all the way through the South Pacific to New Zealand. New Zealand's no longer in the hurricane belt. You're safe. 3, some people risk it, but usually they have a plan. Like what they do is they sail through during the season, but they've already paid for a haul out in Vanuatu or Fiji or Tonga or something. And then if a cyclone is bearing down on them, they beat feet over there, have the boat hauled out. And usually they dig a hole and then put the keel in the hole so the hurricane doesn't blow it over. Or 4, you go north to Hawaii. You go through the equator, you basically winter in Hawaii, let the cyclone season blow through, and then as soon as it's done, you come back. We chose the last one. So here's how it happened. We were late getting across the Pacific because we were waiting for a water maker. We had just gotten our best sponsor ever. It was Spectra Watermakers. They sent us this crazy water maker worth like $9,000, and that was pretty much more than our boat was worth. I think we traded some ungodly amount of work for it too. It was like 100 pictures and 2 Facebook posts a month for a year and 4 videos or something like that. But we were so excited to get this thing. So by the time we got out of Ecuador and decided to cross the Pacific, it was May 1st, which sounds okay because that's the end of the cyclone season. Problem is, we decided to do the Adventurous route and go to Easter Island and Pitcairn and Gambier and then up, which added a lot of time to our route. I mean, we spent 32 days in Easter Island and it was amazing. It's a place you guys have to see. One of the really cool parts about Easter Island is all of the street dogs are happy there. Everybody pets them and feeds them and says a lot about the culture. So we leave May 1st. It takes us 18 days to get to Easter Island. We spend 32 days in Easter Island. We sail all through Pitcairn. We spend a week in Pitcairn. We go to Ducie, Henderson, Pitcairn, Oweno, and then up to the Gambier. We stay there for a little while. And then by the time we get to French Polynesia, now it's pretty late in the season. So our plan was to just kind of hang out and maybe try to apply for one there. Not possible. And they were handing out $6,000 fines for people that were staying longer than their visas and didn't have a visa. And that was like 6 months of cruising for us. So we decided, okay, cyclone season's coming. We're not going to stay here and get a $6,000 fine. Let's go to Hawaii and wait it out, and then we can come back. So the thing is, the cyclone season in the south of the Pacific starts on November 1st, and it overlaps the hurricane season in the north, which ends on November 30th. So for a month, you can get hit by storms in both. In order to mitigate this, we decided, hey, there's a little tiny island chain out here that we can just go to for a month, check it out. It'll be super cool. No one ever goes there. And then in the beginning of December, we'll leave and cross the equator and go to Hawaii, and it'll be safer. That island chain is called the Line Islands, or Kiribati. Also, amazing place. Gotta see it. It's one of the places that I liked the most out of the entire trip on the Cat. But choosing this actually was a much worse decision because of the way that the high and the low pressures work in the wintertime. So in the wintertime, the North Pacific high goes away. And that Aleutian low that we talked about in the last video becomes more prevalent. So we were actually deciding to go when there's way more of a chance of getting hit by a bigger storm or a series of storms, or exactly what happened to us, really. And that brings us to lesson number 1. Don't wing it. Have a plan for cyclone season if you're going to cross the Pacific. We should have gotten year visas. We could have gotten year visas. It was stupid that we didn't. And because we didn't get the year visa for French Polynesia, we needed to get across the Pacific before cyclone season was over. And thirdly, if we had chosen to go to Hawaii, picking winter to cross, like the dead of winter, probably wasn't the best decision. Because anytime you cross out of weather systems, like say from the doldrums to the trades, from the trades to the ITCZ, from the ITCZ to the Aleutian low, every single time two systems touch, it causes havoc. For us, it was crossing the ITCZ and 65 knots of wind, and then having gale force winds the rest of the time, dragging 2 drogues, trying to slow the boat down. But that does bring us to lesson number 2. Have a real drogue on your boat. Our setup basically was an anchor with 40 feet of chain and the rest rope chucked out the back. And then a warp that was about 400 feet of line tied to both ends of the catamaran. So it was just one big loop, dragging, and then the anchor. The problem with that is it doesn't really give you a good solid base of drag. Like every once in a while, that anchor would pop out. We'd start doing 10 knots. Better would have been a Jordan Series drogue. That's a drogue that you can either buy or make yourself, and it has like 150 cones sewn onto it. And each of these little cones is like a little drogue. And the cool part about a Jordan Series drogue is you can adjust it. You can let it out and pull it in and adjust the drag. And all those little cones stay in the water and don't come out and pop out and start skipping everywhere because your drag's not just on the end of the rope. The other really cool thing is those cones collapse and you can actually put them right through a winch, which makes a huge difference when you go to retrieve this thing, you know. That's the kind of gear that changes people's outcomes, makes it easy to use. If you can afford it, Ace Sailmakers makes them. They're about $3,000 for my boat. It's gear that you hope you never need, but it could save your boat, especially on a catamaran. So fast forward, the boat's now broken. We decide to get in the water and tie it together with ropes. That's lesson number 3. I do not regret the decision to get in the water. We saved the boat. I'm very proud of that. Sometimes you just have to get in the water. Cut something out of your prop or cut something off the back of your boat. There are times where you have to get in the water out to sea. This is the thing about getting in the water during a storm in big waves. You are not swimming at this point. You're slowly drowning. Breathing is hard. The boat has more windage than you do. So you're in the water here, boat's here, wind's pushing on the boat, boat's moving, boat's leaving you. You need to swim after it. Also, if you're trying to do anything underneath it, it's just crazy. You have to hold on for dear life. You're basically drowning, just fighting to survive. A lot of you did comment that it's unnecessary risk that I would have gotten in the water and risked my life to save the boat. And why did you save the boat? You should have taken the helicopter. If that boat would have flipped over, there is nothing to hold on to. We could have been washed off the boat and lost out to sea forever. That's why I got in the water and I tied it together. I do not regret that decision. I would do it again. That was the decision that I made as captain, out to sea. So unless you were there with me, you just have to hear the story, okay? So I'm underwater and I'm trying to hold on to the prop shaft and the boat is moving us back and forth and going crazy. And I was thinking to myself, man, I wish I had a helmet. And I know it sounds crazy. I'm not saying go and buy a climbing helmet and keep it on your boat. I'm just relaying to you that that's one of the pieces of gear that I wish I had at the time. It was like a low pro helmet, not like a bicycle helmet or a motorcycle helmet, but like a low pro helmet I could have. That way, if the thing would have hit me, I would have stood a chance. Another thing I really wanted, and this is something that I do recommend you get, is a wrist mounted light for your hand. Like the ones that all the scuba divers wear. That would have come in very handy because I had it in my mouth and then I had it around my neck and then it just wasn't working. So then Kimmy was shining it from the surface and that really didn't work well at all either. I was basically blind the whole time. The third thing that I really could have used, and I learned about it later actually, is spare air. Spare air is a small scuba tank with an integrated regulator, and you just put it in your mouth and it hangs from your mouth and it gives you like 10 minutes of air. And that 10 minutes of air can save your boat. I've got a buddy that his prop shaft broke right behind the transmission, and the prop fell out of the boat, and now he has an 1.5 inch hole in his boat. And by the time he realized what was going on, anything he shoved in that hole would just get popped out by the pressure, because he was in waves, he's in, of course, in a storm. And he had to go in and he had to swim down 6 feet and go plug that hole. And that spare air saved his boat. All right, there's conflicting reports on what I'm going to call lesson 5. Some people say these are stupid, and some people say they're critical. I say sea anchors are absolutely critical. I will not go to sea without one. And it needs to be sized correctly. Because you remember I told you in the story that this thing kept collapsing, and then after 4 tries, we just gave up because I didn't have the strength to keep pulling it back. This is why. Okay, we're going to break that fourth wall just for a minute. I'm going to show you. This is my studio. This is a hammock, okay? And this is pretty much the same thing as the drogue I was using. So we had a big fat swivel. Imagine this is a parachute and not a hammock. It's got a bunch of lines that go to the fabric. Those lines hook up to a big swivel, and that swivel hooks up to a big piece of chain or just to a rope. And then it's got like 400 or 500 feet of rope. And then this sits down in the water. Well, the problem is if this is undersized, when the boat pulls on this, the parachute part will collapse and then it'll flip on itself. So then instead of a really pretty thing, this is what you have. And it twists and it flips and it gets all tangled up. And then now this is what's pulling on it. And it's going to be all collapsed and it's not going to open up right. That is the problem with having a sea anchor that's undersized. And this is one of those pieces of gear that you buy and you hope you never need. Because the only time that you really need a sea anchor is to practice with it, or when your vessel's completely disabled and you're turned sideways to breaking waves. And that sea anchor will keep you from broaching and rolling over in those breaking waves. It also, because you're moving through the water like this and you're breaking the surface tension, it's been said that it creates a slick where the waves don't break right in front of your boat. So they're breaking on both sides of your boat, but not right in front of you because all that sea tension is now disturbed. It makes complete sense to me. I wasn't able to see that in this storm because my sea anchor was undersized and didn't work. And had we had a sea anchor, this whole thing would have been night and day difference. I'm not kidding you. It is absolutely 100% gear I have to go out to sea. I have one on my boat. It's oversized for the boat. Oversized is better than undersized, people. Get a sea anchor. Get a JSD and get a sea anchor. If you don't learn anything else from this video, get a Jordan Series drogue and get a sea anchor. In my opinion, they're just as important as the life raft. Maybe even more. I'd rather be on the boat than in the life raft. If you want to prepare for a storm like this, if you really want to go out to sea, go read chapter 13 in my book, Be the Captain. That's Storm Tactics. It's 5,000 words of just this kind of stuff. What do you do? How do you choose? What are you going to pick? What gear do you need? No fluff, no sponsored plugs, just what I've learned in the last 20 years of sailing offshore. So let's talk about what actually broke the boat. Because it wasn't just the storm, and it wasn't a rogue wave, although the waves were refracting and going crazy, and they did have something to do with it. This specific problem was baked into the boat from the moment she was built. We found out afterwards, actually by Cruisers Forum, I think it might have been Anarchy, that the builder had modified the boat from the original plan. So the original plan had the rear main beam going from the exterior hull to exterior hull. And in this particular boat, they decided to make the engine room doors bigger. So they cut the beam to go from the interior hull to the interior hull, and then made this crutch system to go on the top to strengthen it. And when she cracked open that night, it wasn't just bad luck, it was physics. It just couldn't handle that kind of stress. And it opened up. And then, just like a zipper, the rest of the boat let go as well. She also didn't have any fiberglass on the bridge deck, on the bottom bridge deck. It's hard to say, but I can guess if the rear main beam had been built properly all the way across the boat and the underside of the boat had been filleted and glassed underneath, it probably would have been strong enough to withstand the forces. It was designed in that era where they were still figuring out what worked with cats. And nowadays, the modern production is a lot better. So the chances of this happening to you are super, 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 super slim. But what you should take away from this is there is a lot of load on catamarans in those four corners. And a lot of the cats that I've inspected and delivered have stress fractures in those four corners. So just be aware of that. I'm not trying to say this to scare you. I really don't want to be like a doomsday YouTuber, but you just have to understand the dynamic of it so this doesn't happen to you. So I'm going to leave you with this. Life is a trickster. Right before this accident happened, I was in 3 sailing magazines. I had just come from Easter Island and Pitcairn, and I felt like a badass. I had a beautiful girl with me that I loved. And then in the blink of an eye, poof, it was gone. And at the time, it was the biggest tragedy of my life. I was wrecked. There was no hope on the horizon of ever getting this back. Everything I had was in this boat. It didn't have insurance. I lost everything. But the funny thing is now, years later, looking back on it, that tragedy that I thought was life ending is actually one of the greatest triumphs of my life. So remember, when life inevitably kicks you down and you're floundering thinking it won't get any better, it will, I promise. Think of this story. In my case, all I needed to do was ask for help. And all of you stepped in, picked me up, put me back on my feet. And words can't even express how thankful I am for that. I'm even more fulfilled now in this point in my life, being able to give back to you and have this educational content and speak to the newer generation of offshore sailors and tell them how to do it right and keep them from making the same mistakes I made. So thank you. See you next week.